The Hard Rock Empire is on the air. We are back with another week of podcasting excellence here on the Hard Rock Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. We are back for the second time this week. Of course, we had our new show, which aired on Twitch live and on YouTube on the VOD on Gaku Now. So we hope you'll check that out. Schedule for that's going to be a little unbalanced for a week or so, but we're going to eventually settle into a Wednesday night time slot for that. We won't have an episode this week, but stay tuned. We'll be back. Should be a week from Wednesday with kind of where this is going to fall into the schedule generally. But, of course, we'll still be here with you every Sunday night to talk about the best hard rock and heavy metal. And this week we're talking the best hard rock and heavy metal from May the 15th. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. Second show of the week. That's different. Glad to finally have an outlet to talk about more stuff than hard rock and metal, as much as I do enjoy that. Good week this week. Quite a bit of good music, and I listened to more than usual, so that's always a good thing. Excited to talk about it.
Yeah, it's always fun when there's a lot of good music this week, and of course, we talk about it more on the Discord. We have the link now being pinned in both of the chats for the Discord. Also, you'll be able to just get to anything that we're doing as far as schedule changes, as far as new programming. If you want to check that stuff out, we will publicize that. We'll discuss it in the Discord. So that's really a good place to be. We do share it on social media as well, but Discord is really kind of that first line as far as when any kind of new program is going to show up. So we definitely encourage you to join the Discord. Lots of good stuff there. So make sure you join us there as well. Again, as Mike mentioned, new program Friday night. That went well, and certainly looking forward to continuing that. And we will do that not this week, but next week. Of course, lots of stuff still happening this week. You're getting ready to go on the road this week, so that'll be fun for you to get out and travel this week. And then when you get back, we're going to go see a concert for the first time this year. Really excited about that. It's always amazing to me, like, what concerts. I'm so bad at, like, keeping up with what's coming in the area, and this was one that just kind of came across my Twitter feed, and I was like, oh, this sounds good. Posted in the Discord, and we decided to go, and that's coming up Friday. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's funny when you look at the show and who we're seeing. It's like there was a time, 25 years ago that I would have gone to this concert and been amazed that the band still sounded good. And here we are now 25, 26 years later, and they still sound good. Like,
yeah.
Again, aging is funny because when I questioned that the first time, they were probably younger than I am now. So it's weird how that works. But yeah, looking forward to that. Warrant, Firehouse, Bullet Boys. Should be a good time.
I'll be up at the Phrase Pavilion in Dayton coming up, in Kettering, actually, to be a little more exact, in the suburbs of Dayton, Ohio. And they're on tour, so check your local listings. You may be able to catch those bands in your area. So we'll talk more about Bullet Boys, obviously, as you can see on the screen a little bit later in the program. Unfortunately, couldn't find the original artwork for that album in high quality form, but the remastered version was widely available, so that has made its way onto the screen, which is wild in its own right, I guess. But we'll talk more about that coming up in the Vault segment, which of course comes up at the end of the program. Before we get to that, a topic that we have talked about on the podcast before, and a topic that kind of came up again for a couple of different reasons in this week's list, and one of them is the band that I picked coming up, and we'll get a little bit more into that. But this really, I don't want to make this sound like this is directed necessarily at this particular band, because we see this really every week as Mike goes through the list, and that is the use of artificial intelligence, specifically in music videos. But this week, Mike, we actually had a band that got booted from Metal Archives because of their excessive use of AI, which I think is a first as far as we know since we've been doing the podcast.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious how that works, because I can't imagine that this is the first instance where the use of AI has been fairly obvious, I guess. I think to some degree, the person behind this band kind of just came out and said, yeah, I use it for some stuff. Like, I think it was more in terms of the video and less of the music production. But I've seen videos in the past, like Rick Beato has a few where he kind of dissects a song and kind of talks about some of the hallmarks of AI, where there's certain artifacts in the sound that you can pick up on if you kind of know what you're listening for. And in this case, the band is Solemnity. I'm not really familiar with them. I know at this point it's kind of just the main guy behind the band, Sven the Axe. But they actually pulled the most recent album, Opus Barbaricum, off of Metal Archives due to the use of generative AI. It's interesting. I just, we talked about it off air. I guess I just want bands to be open about it. I want transparency. I want to know what I'm getting myself into. The problem is when you pull up these music videos on YouTube for an album and the video itself is heavily AI drenched. I think fans will just make that connection. Well, if you're using it here, how do I know you're not using it in the actual sound that I'm hearing? I question whether you want to go that route.
Well, and Frontline, who we're going to talk about later, certainly did that in their video. And we have seen big name acts, and we're not just talking about bands here and there. Like we've seen people who have been in A-list acts they're now continuing to do music, use AI in their videos. I can't remember off the top of my head who it was, but there was one pretty well-known act that had this kind of it was almost like a steampunk era looking video in black and white, and it was very clearly AI. And immediately it's I don't even care what this sounds like. I don't want to watch this. And I know music videos as a genre is, I don't want to say it's dead, but it is certainly dead compared to what it was at its height. So I don't know if that's a case where they feel like more people are going to hear the music on Bandcamp or Spotify or YouTube Music instead of seeing the music video. But you're 100% right. As soon as I see a band that has AI in their video, I just have to assume, well, if you're willing to use it for your video, you're willing to use it in your music. And the hard part about this is, and this is the other thing we discussed off air, just like so many other topics, where do you draw the line and what is acceptable use of technology and what is too far? There are obviously the act of recording an album is to some degree artificial. I mean, even all the way back to the Beach Boys when they were overdubbing their stuff back in the 60s. Now the thing is,
you're using technology to do something and put something on a record that you can't produce live.
Correct. And obviously a lot of those bands figured out how to do it to some degree live, because obviously back then it would have been a scandal, I think, if you couldn't try to produce that same sound in a concert that you were doing on a record. But whether it's auto-tune, whether it is any kind of looping, I mean, just the act of using a DAW, using something like Audition or Final Cut or just something that you can use the tech in there to manipulate the files is to some degree using technology to better the sound.
Yeah.
Now, I will not sit here and make an argument that is the same as creating a song out of thin air.
Out of a prompt, essentially.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing. But as I joked on before we got on the air, and I think it's 100% true, it's like the old PETA billboard where you had the giant list of animals, and it's like, where do you draw the line between food and pets? And obviously, every time they put one of those billboards up, somebody would answer that question for them. But I really don't know. I know for sure what is on the one end of the line, but I don't know when you get to that gray area what is actually acceptable and what is 2 steps too far as using technology to make your sound better.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think it's not going anywhere. Like, it's going to be around, and every industry uses it. I think sometimes we freak out when it's used in entertainment, but we don't have that same level of criticism when it costs people jobs in other fields, and I think that's unfortunate. But yeah, I think anyone who's pro AI will always kind of throw out we don't use it to replace the human element, we use it to enhance the human element. It's when you're at work and you write a prompt to give you ideas of things that you can then act upon yourself. There's a line, and I think once it's okay, started at 0, now you have a full album and you haven't touched a musical instrument. That's an extreme example, but now we know where that is. Like, where does the line actually sit? I don't know.
Because it's like, if you do that, if you have it create your album, but then you go back and play it, like, well, it just made the tracks. It gave you the creative inspiration to play the guitar or play the keyboard or sing it. Again, is that okay or is that not okay? And then are you tempted to leave a little bit of that AI stuff in? Like, well, I really like what this sounded like. It's only one little part. It's a drum fill or something. I'll slide that in there and nobody's going to notice because the rest of it's very authentic. And again, that's where that slippery slope. And, the reality is my job full time, is covering the news. And most days that makes me want to pull my eyes out. But one of the big topics right now that isn't getting enough attention is how many tech layoffs there are. And it's white collar jobs that are going away because those people are being replaced by AI, despite the whole AI won't replace you. It'll, people who use AI will replace people who don't. Well, that's not 100% true in some fields. So, and it's outside of entertainment. It doesn't maybe get the attention. It gets the attention for me because
if you're in it,
I have to pay attention to it. It's like, 10,000 jobs here, 5,000 jobs there. And, so it's definitely here and it's definitely not going anywhere. Now, there is pushback in a lot of places now because they're finding out that actually the AI is really expensive. And it's like, actually turns out it's cheaper to keep the people and
why wouldn't it be? If it has the power to replace a large percentage of the workforce, it should be really expensive because it clearly is really valuable.
Well, and the reality is it takes a lot more energy, electricity to come up with those ideas than it does the brain power in somebody's head to use that level of electricity. So AI is a messy topic, and the debate will continue because it's not going anywhere. And like Mike said, I think number one, that's why it's really important to go see bands live as much as you can, because you're going to know when they get out on stage.
Show me you can do it.
Yeah, I'm going to see it. So you should definitely do that. And number two, I think it is on the onus is on bands to show me you can do it. Yeah. Whether it's live videos, whether it's a live album, whatever it may be, because in this day and age where it is so easy to create stuff out of thin air, the moment you start introducing that, and it doesn't even have to be a whole music video. We were talking before we went on the air about, I see athletic directors in our area using AI to generate graphics about coaching openings that probably would have taken you 10 minutes to sit down with Photoshop and create.
Yeah.
And they're doing it in 30 seconds using Claude. And it's like, that's lazy to me. But at the same time, it's like, if your student does that and takes 3 minutes and turns in a research paper, you're going to give them an F, a little hypocritical, if you ask me. So it's a messy issue that I think, unfortunately, we're going to have to discuss from time to time because it's going to continue to come up, probably more so as the technology just gets better and better.
Yeah, for sure. And while I'm probably not I'm not going on these videos that are AI and leaving comments about how awful it is. That's not really me. But there are people out there that are that dead set against it. I think as a fan, I would just tell the artist, and this is just me speaking, I can't speak for everybody, a YouTube video where it's just your album cover art or maybe just shots of you in the studio, that's going to be infinitely better than the AI because there's never going to be negative backlash on those other ones.
No, and to me, that is a far better road to go than to create some AI video because, again, it's the idea that, well, if you're willing to do that, you're willing to use AI in your recording. And I think, and I will say, kudos to the bands who actually still take the time to go out back and shoot their videos.
Yeah.
Because we see a bunch of those every week, too, where it's like, clearly they've got a forest behind one of their guys' houses, and they go back there and they shoot some video, and it's like, is it cheesy looking? Yeah, but you know what? It's authentic, and I know those guys are willing to put in that level of work to make a music video. Even if the music isn't great, I'm going to applaud them for that effort, and it makes me think that they're really playing what I hear on the record.
It's funny, going back to the PETA billboard, I find the thing kind of ridiculous because if they didn't already know where the line's supposed to be drawn, why did they order the animals in a way where there's an obvious place where the line should be drawn?
Yeah.
Why didn't they put, cow on the opposite side of the dogs Where over on the other side, there's like chicken, where you have to draw 2 lines to make sure saying, yeah, we eat the chicken and we eat the cow. We don't eat,
And I don't know if that ad was based on like another ad from maybe like the Meat Eaters Association. Like, I just remember honestly just seeing the altered result of that billboard where somebody would draw lines. Like, right here is where that line is drawn. So, yeah, it's a messy topic. And I think, again, our advice is just be careful about your AI usage if you're a band, or just be upfront about it. One of the two. And, if you're willing to use it, whether it's album art, whether it's music video, whether it's in the song, like, just tell people, like, look, we're going to use this. And, you can then judge what you think of the band based on how much of it they use. But it's not a clean topic. There's no question that it is messy. And again, we're not here to pass judgment on anybody. It's a concern. And if you want your band to do well, I think the more you can make people believe what you're doing is authentic, the better chance you're going to have of breaking through and really becoming popular. So that's kind of our 2 cents on AI. We'll try not to belabor the point and talk about it too often, because it is just it's a heavy topic, and but one that I think is worth discussing because it is so central to any kind of creative art, which is obviously what we talk about on this podcast. And with that out of the way, let's get to the more fun topics of the week, and that is the music. And it was a good week in music, as Mike said. And right now I'm going to paste the playlist that Mike has created in both of the chats. Of course, each week he goes through and pulls a list of the new releases from a couple of different sources, and then we'll pull a video from at least a good chunk of the new releases and put them onto a YouTube playlist. Always encourage you to watch the playlist. There's some good stuff on there, and depending on what type of music you like, I thought this was one of those something for everyone type weeks. There was a wide range of good stuff, so I encourage you to listen to the playlist, find you a band that you want to check out, and check out the album. But like I said, it was a good week overall, and of course, like I said, the week is May the 15th in this case. So before we get to our picks, we each make one pick off of that list. We usually go through, and Mike will discuss some other notables on the list, any funny names or anything that might stand out. So, Mike, what is the rest of the story, if you will?
Oh, yeah, I forgot to go through and look at the funny names. That's unfortunate. So as far as major releases this week, we did have the 8th studio album from Periphery, the American modern progressive metal band. That album, A Pale White Dot. We got a new one from Peter Frampton this week.
Oh, okay.
Did not realize he was still out there putting out music. It's his 19th studio album. The track I was going to pull for the playlist just didn't really do it for me. I'm not a huge Frampton fan, but cool to see when a legend is still out there putting out music. Apparently, in 2019, he was diagnosed with inclusion body myositis, muscle disorder causing inflammation, weakness, and atrophy. So the fact that he's still putting out music is probably really impressive. Definitely has some big stars collaborating with him on it. So if you're a fan, definitely check it out. Finally, for the major acts, we got Propane with their newest one, Stone Cold Anger. They're a classic hardcore metal band, started in 1991, and it's their first full-length album since 2015, so probably worth checking out as well.
Nice.
From the re-released box sets this week, we have Slayer re-releasing Hell Awaits for its 40th anniversary.
Jeez.
It's their second studio album. Of course, there's a super special edition of this. It's a 3-vinyl set, includes the album with fire splatter vinyl. Then also the other 2 records include Live in Bochum, 1985 concert in Germany. You get a 60-page booklet with photos and liner notes, a slip mat, 2 posters, a Slatanic Wehrmacht newsletter replica,
Okay.
A merch sheet replica, 2 flyers, a tour laminate replica, a ticket replica from the Bochum show, and you can get all that for $125. So for three vinyl box set, not too crazy.
No, that's really a reasonable deal as far as those super special box sets.
Yeah, I'm always curious to see what they're pricing them at, and that seemed like one of the more reasonable ones for sure. Some of the other enjoyable stuff that I listened to this week that I did not pick, we have the newest from Crown Lands, Apocalypse. They are a progressive rock duo from Canada. Check out their video for Black Star on YouTube. Vocalist kind of has this Mark Slaughter thing going on. I really dug their sound, but worth checking out. Open Sight released The Outfit. They're a progressive metal band from the UK. Another band who put out a really cool music video, just like Crown Lands did. really unique sound. Metal Archives lists their themes as suspense, horror, and espionage. So, I mean, how can that not be entertaining? Moving on, we got Profaned with The Human Condition, a Swedish metal band. It's their first full-length album. Their Bandcamp says they're for fans of Nevermore, Morgana Le Fay, Iced Earth, and Candlemass. Really cool album, and one that I definitely want to go and revisit after the show is over. And then one that, unfortunately, I wasn't able to find their album on YouTube Music. The band is Advent Horizon. Their newest album is Falling Together. They're a progressive metal band from Salt Lake City. The track that I pulled for the playlist, Faith's Window, is a really cool song. Definitely want to check out the rest because I feel like these guys probably have a really interesting album on their hands. But yeah, that's it for this week.
Yeah, a couple of the things I noted in addition. I think everything Mike mentioned I had marked in some shape or fashion. The band Held released the album Gray. It's a post-hardcore band out of New York.
Yeah.
What I've heard of that was pretty good. I need to go back and listen to that full album. Sum of Seven, a progressive metal band from Finland, released Echoes of the Hypermind. Didn't have the column far enough open.
Yeah.
That was what I've heard of. That has been solid. Another one I need to go back to. And since we're going to talk about Frontiers Records this week pretty heavily, Von Groove with Born to Rock. Kind of cheesy.
But man, their sound is really good.
Their sound is really good. There were a little AI in their video as well, as I caught one of the spots where their name was misspelled, unless they changed their name at some point.
I looked that up, but I couldn't find any evidence that they were ever Van Groove.
So, yeah,
whatever.
I'm guessing the AI just made a bumble and nobody caught that. But overall, solid sound from that hard rock band from Canada. It's definitely, if you're a fan of cheesy AOR-type rock, I would encourage you to give that a listen as well. But alas, there can only be two and one each. And like you said, Frontier is getting the heavy spotlight again this week. That's what happens when you release all your albums in the same week, which they tend to do. We're going to get to them, though, now, Mike. And I really, really enjoyed this album. I think I had not had the chance to listen to this when you had picked this. This definitely is one of the best things I've heard this week. Mike, what do you got picked for us this week?
Yeah, it's one that I'd listened to several other albums, obviously, but none of them could really overtake this one in my mind as far as the picks go. We were looking at the fourth studio album from a Swedish sleaze metal band. They are Confess, not to be confused with the Iranian thrash metal band. Confess is their newest album, Metamorphosis.
Yeah, I'll be honest, like the playlist track was kind of like, oh, that's okay. Like it's good, but it's like, it didn't jump out at me. But having gone back now and listened to almost the entire album, I thought this was really outstanding.
Title track was a bit of a grower, but there are definitely other tracks on the album that are just ridiculously solid. Like I mentioned, this is their fourth studio album. According to Frontier's webpage for the album, this is their most ambitious one to date, with an evolution in their sound and the most well-crafted songs that they've written musically and lyrically. The band consists of John Elliott on vocals, Samuel Samael on drums, Ludwig Nordlander on guitars, Aser Hakala on guitars, and Lucky on bass. Albums mixed and mastered by Eric Martinson, the frontman from the band Eclipse, who they say has taken their sound to a new level. I mean, he's kind of a legend, so I certainly believe that. Album's a really great blend of both pop metal polish and hard rock heaviness. I wasn't sure with an album title like Metamorphosis. I'm generally not a fan of taking words and mashing them together like that. But it's a really solid album, and honestly, just kind of based on what I read on the rockpit.net's review of it, I'm thinking maybe Metamorphosis is actually just discussing the evolution in their sound and how they're kind of maybe not pure sleaze rock anymore. They've kind of shifted into more melodic metal AOR territory, but definitely a strong album. Rockpit.net gave it a 9 out of 10. Also spoke highly of the band's back catalog, so I may have to check that out as well. I struggled to pick out standout tracks because the more I went through it, the more I was like, well, that one's a standout, and so is that. And not every song can be a standout, or else there are no standouts.
True.
But if I were to pick some, I would go with The Warriors, Wicked Temptations, Metamorphosis, Pursuit of the Ginny Hanover, Running to My Death, and the track that I picked to listen to, the next to last track on the album, if you count the bonus track, and that is Silver Malin.
So let's check these guys out. This is Confess with their portmanteau track, title name, Metamorphosis. Easy for me to say. This is the 10th track off of this Silver Malin. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
To die, a prophecy of lies. They wish
I definitely hear a little bit of the sleaze rock still kind of hanging on there. Like you can tell it was an influence to what these guys do, but obviously there's a lot more melody in this album than there is sleaze. But if you're a fan of sleaze rock, I think you'll really get into this. I think it is a natural progression of what these guys have done, and it's just, to me, it's musically the most balanced album I've heard as far as everybody involved, all the guitars, the drums, the vocals. It all just feels balanced. It doesn't feel like, because we're going to kind of get to that with my pick, that if you can tell the lead singer is kind of the guy because it feels like the vocals are very out in front. This doesn't feel that way at all. It feels very balanced, and I think it really helps kind of make it a very full album all the way to the end.
Yeah, I feel like John Elliott's vocals kind of have that tinge of sleaze to them, which I think really works. But then you're halfway through the album and you start hearing Def Leppard harmonies, and you're just like, wait a minute, what's going on here? But yeah, just a tremendous album.
Yeah, really good stuff from those guys. Definitely worth checking that out. Mike's pick for this week. We are staying with Frontiers Records, and I thought these guys were a really good story. And again, earlier discussions aside, I really do like their sound, and it's great to see them back. This is the German melodic rock pioneers Frontline with their new release, Rebirth. First off, I kind of chuckled when you read from the Frontiers press release talking about something being their most ambitious. I can't wait till we read the one where it's like, this is their least ambitious album that they've ever
They phoned
released.
this one in, but I think you'll still like it.
But obviously these guys, looking from the PR, a powerful and emotional statement. These guys helped define European AOR since the late 1980s. They were founded in Nuremberg in 1989. Were one of the genre's leading acts of the late 80s and early 90s in Europe, led by Steven Kammerer's unmistakable vocals, which honestly, as I'll mention a little bit later, sound as good as ever. Great to hear him back out there. Songwriting approach rooted in strong melodies, big hooks, and album-oriented vision. Over the years, the band released a couple of albums, State of Rock in 1994, followed by Two-Faced, Heroes, Right Attitude, Against the World, The Seventh Sign, Circles, and Ultimate Salvation, earning an international reputation as Germany's most respected AOR exports. Unfortunately, they lost guitarist and songwriter Robbie Boble in 2022. Rebirth is both a tribute to him and a step forward. They brought in Christian Mulroth to be able to try to fill that void that Boble left behind. We talked a little bit about the AOR or the AI stuff in the video, so we won't belabor that here. But the other criticism, and we've talked about this ad nauseum on the podcast as well, so we won't relitigate this, is there were people critical. They feel like it's a camera or solo project because, Boble passed away, so this isn't the same band. But we've talked about it before. Bands should be able to continue on even after members pass away. I don't think there's any issue with that at all. And honestly, this feels like a tribute to him, and I think that's the best thing you can possibly do. And the vocals are great. The music is very AOR-ish. It's definitely doesn't have the same edge as Mike's pick, but overall, very solid. If you like AOR, I think you're going to like this. Overall, I definitely would like to go back and check out their stuff from the 90s now to really see what that classic sound sounded like and see if that has, colored some of the thoughts about this new album based on what the old album sounded like. But standout tracks include Blacktop Parachute, After You're Gone, Burning Horizon, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast is Boulevard Echo. This is Frontline with their new album, Rebirth. This is the 5th track off of this album, Boulevard Echo. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. I think a couple of things to note here. There were definitely a couple of tracks that it felt like the vocals were very out in front. of the music. And again, I think when the lead singer is your holdover, maybe that's going to happen. We've had that happen before with bands where the guitarist is the main person in the band, and you feel like the lead guitar is in the front of the mix. I don't know if that was intentional, but there were a couple times I noticed it. And the other side to it too is AOR as a genre, especially this, which is very AOR compared to Mike's pick, even though they both live under the same umbrella, can feel fake almost because it is so polished and it is so
perfect.
Yeah. So I think that I can see where people could look at that and say, oh, it doesn't sound real, but overall sounds good to me. And I'm going to give these guys the benefit of the doubt and assume that this is how they're sounding now. I think they're going to probably tour, which would, again, you get out there on tour, you really see what they got. But overall, I enjoyed this album. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's really one of those things that if this isn't on the up and up, it'll eventually be confirmed that that's the case. That's just how it is. But yeah, until then, I just have to assume that this is legit. The whole carrying on as a band after the passing of someone really big in the band is weird to me because I presume these guys were probably fairly close. They were in a band together. Like, are you going to tell the person, hey, you can't keep making music, the thing that you really love doing, you can't do the thing that makes you happy because someone close to you died? That's really strange to me. Like, I'm not a huge Linkin Park fan, but I can't fault them for getting back out there after Chester passed away. Like,
absolutely.
Who am I to tell them that? I just...
Well, we're going to see Warrant coming up on Friday. How do you tell them they can't go on after Janie Lane's death?
Not really their problem, not their fault, sadly. But nope, you can't make a living anymore. You have to do something else.
You got to be a new band. You can't use all that credit you've built up. It doesn't make sense.
And like when you think of Warrant, it's like no one's going to be in attendance at that concert Friday thinking, I bet Janie Lane's going to be with them this time. No, people know that. Like people know that he's passed away. They're not deceiving anybody.
Right.
Like I don't know. It's to me. The awkward thing is when everyone's alive and they break off into 4 different versions of the band. That's the awkward one.
Yeah.
Like moving on after someone's passed away, I'm not going to be the one to throw a fit about that.
No, not at all. If you're on Twitch, we got an ad break coming up in 4 seconds, so we'll be back on the other side with The Vault, so please stick around for that. For everybody who's not on Twitch, or if you're subscribed on Twitch, we'll continue the discussion that we were just talking about. And yeah, I think it's one of those things. We're still waiting for the ad to fire. It says ad starting soon, and it's just sitting there. So hopefully that ad will fire and it doesn't just hold in the just sitting there phase. But it's one of those things as our ad gets underway that I think it's great that these guys want to get back out there. And Cameron has been involved in some other projects as well, kind of in the meantime. So maybe there was at first that hesitancy to use the name, and I think that's another one of those things. If a guy decides not to use the band name because it's like, I think a perfect example that could have been, if Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson had decided, we're going to make music together again, but we're not going to call ourselves Rush because that is with Neil Peart and he's not here anymore. I think people would have respected that. Now, the difference is if Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson form a new band, people are going to think, we're going to go see that because we know those guys. Like, not every band gets to that level of stardom, but if a band decides they don't want to continue, that's completely okay, too.
Yeah, I think when you're a band like Rush, you kind of have you're allowed to make that decision one way or the other. And I think if they had decided to make new music that wasn't going to be Rush music, they would go under a different name. Yeah. But I think they can still produce Rush music if they wanted to. It's just a matter of what they're actually creating. You talk about that concert on Friday, and I think another interesting kind of wrinkle to that is Firehouse.
Yeah.
Obviously their lead singer CJ Snare passed away 2 years ago, and he was sick and kind of like picked who I believe who his replacement was. Like they found the guy and they brought him in. It was like almost like passing the torch. So and they sound great. So, obviously sad, but got to keep going on.
Absolutely. And again, it should be up to the band. And if the band wants to go on, they should go on. If they decide they don't, that's completely okay too. But yeah, so kind of all that's been stated on that topic. And we're back from the ad break. We welcome you back. Just a reminder, we'll be back here with you again next Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. The music of May the 22nd will be on the docket coming up next week, so we hope you'll join us for that live on Twitch and on YouTube, and the VOD in both places. But it is time to get to the vault. Mike and I will each pick a classic album to check out, and almost as if it just kind of worked out perfectly from a timing standpoint. You've been going through the 90s as one of your vault gimmicks. Kind of talk about some of the bands that may have been left behind once grunge really kicked into full effect in the mid-90s. And perfect example is one of the bands we're going to be seeing on Friday night. So what do you got for the vault this week?
Yeah, so we moved on to the letter B. Obviously, 2 weeks ago, we talked about Alice Cooper and his album from 1994. Yeah, this one's an interesting one. There weren't a lot of options in my discography for B bands, but I think this one's pretty cool. You have a band whose debut album came out in 1988. Went on to release a couple other albums that probably could have been included for this gimmick, but I specifically picked 1995's album because the Wikipedia page pointed out that the band had broken up, got back together, and kind of pursued a different sound than what they were known for. That band is BulletBoys, and we were talking about their 1995 album, Acid Monkey.
And as I mentioned, if you're maybe joining us late or didn't catch it earlier, like I couldn't find a high-quality image of their original artwork.
Original artwork's wild looking.
It is. So this is from the 2024, I think, remaster of the album. So if you go buy it now, that's what you're going to see.
Yeah. And That was the album. That's actually the version I listened to on YouTube Music, the 2024 remaster. So that worked out pretty well. I really enjoyed their debut in 1988. Had obviously songs like "Hard as a Rock," "Smooth Up in Ya," "For the Love of Money," "Shoot the Preacher Down," "Hell on My Heels." It was a solid album. I really didn't listen to their next two albums, in 1991's "Freak Show" and 1993's "Zaza." And like I said, they probably could have been included because they both would have post-dated grunge kind of hitting the mainstream. But yeah, Acid Monkey, they mentioned that the band broke up in 1993, but singer Mark Torian and bassist Lonnie Vincent kept going as BulletBoys, adding Tommy Pittum on guitar and Robbie Karras on drums. And the Wikipedia said this album featured more of an alternative rock and pop punk influence. So I thought, okay, so we have a clear statement of their sound is different. Let's go with that. And yeah, this album definitely has a different vibe. Gone are like the polished hard rock riffs you got from the debut. First track on the album, Weasel. Definitely not hard as a rock. It's definitely more like noise punk. It was really kind of odd. Moving on to Surf Dog. Had a bit of like a sludgy riff going on. That part of it was cool. Otherwise, I'm not really sure what their goal is here. Third track, Dis, feels more like an attempt at like the grunge alternative sound, so I can kind of see where that's coming from. The song Thorn started with an acoustic, then got heavier in the chorus. And Mark's vocals here sound like 1995 grunge, post-grunge vocals, only him doing them, which to me, I think he's a really good front man, so I feel like this is kind of a waste of his talent. The track Aliens has this lounge song thing going on with Torian singing about an alien abduction. Definitely a little odd. Odd thing about this album is it kind of gets stronger later on in the album. Song Toy almost has like a new metal riff to it. Vocals are good, especially in the chorus. Torian's still kind of doing that grunge Jarl thing with his voice, but honestly, that song was solid. The next track you have, the original album has it listed as Terror Ride. The 2024 remaster calls it Edit Piece / Terror Ride. Starts with this low chugging guitar. It's another one of the stronger songs on the album. Then we get to the last track. BulletBoys have kind of been known for doing cover tracks. You had For the Love of Money on their first album. But yeah, this one here, you're looking at a cover of the 1971 Don McLean hit American Pie.
Oh.
Amazingly enough, this is a really good cover.
Okay.
Slightly heavier than the original, but otherwise just a faithful cover of it. It was totally not what I was expecting. But, kind of going through their catalog, it's clear that Mark Torian, I assume, and the band has a pretty eclectic taste in music. You had not only the covers I mentioned before, but in 2011 they released a covers album, and that had just kind of a really wild track list, just stuff you wouldn't expect. Let me pull it up real quick. Let's see. 2011, Rocked and Ripped. We got covers of Dr. Feelgood, Motley Crue, Living on a Prayer, Bon Jovi, Take Me Home Tonight, Eddie Money, Faithfully, Journey,
Okay.
Balls to the Wall, Accept, Free Fallin', Tom Petty,
Okay.
Renegade, Styx, Falling in Love, Scorpions, Effin' Perfect, Pink, The Rover, Led Zeppelin, I'll See You in My Dreams, Giant,
Great song.
Colder Weather, Zach Brown Band,
That's interesting.
Rehab, Amy Winehouse,
Okay, I guess.
Broken Wings, Mr. Mister,
Okay.
Tiny Dancer, Elton John.
Who doesn't like Elton John?
So kind of all over the place. And what I heard off that album, even, the covers are pretty good. So kind of going back to the Acid Monkey album itself, it's weird. Like, I feel like they started out really wanting to do something outside the box with the album. And then as you went on, they just kind of settled back into kind of what you'd expect a 1995 Bullet Boys album to sound like. As a result, to me, the back half of the album was much better than the front half. But yeah, I've never faulted a band for trying something different.
Yeah, and there are a lot of bands did that at the time. A couple of notes just going through what you went through. Number one, kind of ironic, a friend of mine today mentioned to me, he's like, hey, if you're free on August the 1st, like, I got an extra ticket to see Don McLean at the Murphy Theater in Wilmington.
Oh, weird.
So I may get to see American Pie live in August, which I'll admit is probably a song that has been overplayed in my lifetime to where I don't have the same level of affinity to it as some people do. But you can't question that it's a masterpiece of songwriting and
classic
music for sure. Kind of a piece of Americana, if you will. We'll never hear the song Smooth Up In Ya without hearing Smooth Opinion.
Yeah.
That has been ruined forever. That's an amazing song. Yeah, I'm excited to see these guys. Just kind of see what their set list looks like. They're opening on Friday night. Yeah, it sounds like I'll probably skip this album other than maybe the back half, but I definitely want to check out their covers because that's intriguing to me, and go back and maybe listen to those first three albums to just kind of revisit their classic sound before the concert. But interesting.
Not to harp on American Pie, but we should at some point in time make a list of songs that you'd much rather hear the radio edit of. Yeah. Because, American Pie is 8.5 minutes long normally.
Yeah, that's a long song.
Yeah, and I know there's a shortened version of it, which, there are some songs that give me the full version. I don't want the shortened one.
Yeah.
That's not really one of them for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I can only imagine live in concert, that's probably like 15 minutes. Unless he does it. It's like the one Japanese band I saw that did their hit song like 3 times during the concert because it was big. Maybe.
I guess the other question is why has he not written a sequel to that? Like
American Pie 2.
The music had to come back to life at some point.
I think there's someone like Marty Robbins who wrote El Paso, and then he wrote El Paso City, which was him looking back at El Paso and thinking that was he there. And then I guess if he hadn't passed away, like there was supposed to be a third and final song about El Paso as like the trilogy. So like he knew like El Paso was a moneymaker. Well, let's write another song about El Paso and then, continue on with maybe a third one as well.
Here's kind of something wild. I just pulled it up on Wikipedia. McLean's combined version is the 6th longest song to enter the Billboard Hot 100. The song also held the record for almost 50 years of being the longest song to reach number 1.
Wow, that's wild. So Inagata-Davida didn't make it then.
It did not. Unfortunately, in 2021, Taylor Swift's All Too Well, which is 10 minutes long, can't fathom a 10-minute long Taylor Swift song, broke the record. But yeah, that's
wild. I did not know that. But yeah, so
the more you know.
The more you know. But we jumped around there a little bit, but Bullet Boys, awesome to see them still going, and looking forward to seeing those guys live on Friday. I am going through a couple of different gimmicks. The gimmick we're talking about this week, I'm going through the 70s, starting in the late 60s. Now I'm into the 70s, going through the list on Wikipedia of the one-hit wonders. And I'm going through and finding the full album of these one-hit wonders and listening to the album and judging, like, should this have been a one-hit wonder? Like, were there more good songs? What about the band? So we're going up to 1974 this week, and we are going to get to a song that is a great song that is almost completely historically inaccurate. We are talking about the band Paper Lace. The song is The Night Chicago Died, and the album it came off of is the very cleverly named Paper Lace and Other Bits of Material from 1974. So this band was originally formed in 1967 as Music Box. They performed covers of Beach Boys songs in their early days, which is kind of where you feel like that 60s influence comes from. 1969, they changed their name to Paper Lace. They released their first album in 1972, First Edition. It was the first of their 2 studio albums. Based off of some of the success they had, songwriters Mitch Murray and Peter Callender offered the band a song called Billy Don't Be a Hero. That song took off in the UK. It spent 14 weeks on the UK singles chart, 3 weeks of them at number 1. As it turned out, before that song could really catch on in the US, a band called Bo Donaldson and the Haywoods covered the song, and that song ended up being the one that charted. So it kind of robbed Paper Lace of that second hit. And if you look at YouTube Music, that song has a lot of listens, so it's very popular. Unfortunately, didn't hit in the US. Murray and Callender went to the band again, so we've got this other song called The Night Chicago Died. That ended up being, obviously, the huge hit in the U.S. The band was made up of Phil Wright on drums and lead vocals, Mick Vaughn on lead rhythm guitar, arranger, and backing vocals, Cliff Fish, which was actually his real name, Clifford Victor Fish, bass guitar and backing vocals, and Chris Morris on rhythm, lead guitar, keyboards, and backing vocals. But I mentioned that the other hit didn't really catch on for these guys. So we get to The Night Chicago Died, and first off, if you haven't listened to that song, you should go listen to it. It's a great piece of music. It's catchy. I will belt it out and sing it. And I've been singing it all week because, of course, I've been listening to this album. As somebody pointed out, if they would have avoided mentioning Al Capone, I think they probably get away with this without people really looking at it as a historical event. But they do mention Al Capone. So the story of the song is Al Capone battling Chicago police during the Prohibition era. Unfortunately, that never really happened. There was an incident where Al Capone took a bunch of his men and had them dress up like police. But there was no war between the two. Despite, basically not having any kind of historical backing, and really, the band was unable to perform the song in the U.S. due to contractual issues. It topped the Billboard Hot 100 for 1 week, selling over 3 million copies, and was awarded a gold record by the RIAA in August of 1974. Unfortunately, as so many of these one-hit wonders come about, like the band, by the time the song hit, the band was already kind of in the process of breaking up, so they never were really able to capitalize that fully. There were a couple of versions of the band that did go out, but didn't really work out for any more hits. This was the first album, really, where I wondered why there weren't more hits off of it. This was a really solid album of a band that clearly is caught between the 60s era rock and 70s era disco. The song, as I mentioned, inspired by the real-life St. Valentine's Day massacre, although that involved Capone's men killing 7 of Bugs Moran's gang. It had nothing to do with police. No confrontation large enough to leave around 100 police dead. Capone was arrested in 1932 for tax evasion. The song was supposedly taking place on the east side of Chicago. If you know Chicago, the east side of Chicago is the lake. There is an east side, but it's not an area where you would have Al Capone and police having a big battle there. So the songwriters Peter Callender and Mitch Murray said in interviews they had never been to Chicago before, and their knowledge of the city in the period were really limited to gangster films. Callender defended his interpretation of Chicago's geography by saying there's an east side of everywhere. That's fair. The mayor at the time, it was Richard Daley, was not a fan, had some very pointed comments to say. But again, if you can allow them to take very significant liberties to the reality of what happened in Chicago, This is just a great piece of music. And the thing you find by listening to the full album is these guys are really talented, and it's really a shame that they couldn't have gone on. Now, would their kind of 60s rooted sound have carried through the disco era? I think that was probably in the end what was their demise, that they were kind of lost in that shuffle. They weren't, the classic rock bands that would come about in the late 70s, and they weren't disco, even though there were some disco elements to this album. So they kind of, as kind of the hair bands in the early to mid 90s, they kind of just fell through the cracks, and probably like a lot of other bands. But overall, I enjoyed this. This album was fun. I definitely encourage, if you're a fan of the song, I definitely encourage you to find the album and check it out. It is available on YouTube Music. Some standout tracks include Billy Don't Be a Hero, Hitchin' a Ride 74, I Did What I Did for Maria, The Night Chicago Died, and Love Song. It was fun. Honestly, these guys were really talented, and this was the best of the one-hit wonder albums I've listened to. Think that title might only last a week. I'm just going out on a limb here. We're getting to 1975 next week, and we're going to be talking about the band Ace. And of course, the song is How Long, but of course, the legendary frontman Paul Carrick is the lead singer of Ace. So I'm going to guess that the rest of that album is going to be really good. So I'm looking forward to that in 2 weeks, actually, as we get back to the Journey stuff next week. But just interesting stuff with The Night Chicago Died.
Yeah, I always kind of figured that song was too good for the band to not have more than one song. It just seemed very unlikely. And obviously, if anything's going to kill Chicago, it's going to be the Bears leaving.
That's true. They're moving to the east side of Chicago.
Which turns out is in Indiana. Who knew?
We could get into that topic because we have been to Gary, Indiana, which is kind of the area where this is going to be. And
no one's calling it Gary, Indiana. It's like, oh, they're going to be in Hammond. Yeah. I don't know what Hammond is. I know Gary's somewhere in that area.
Yeah, we have been there.
I mean, well, Gary is what happens to Chicago when it dies.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you tell me Al Capone had a battle in Gary, Indiana, I think I would buy that song. But yeah, that's a different ballgame altogether. But yeah, that's a great song though. It's just it is exactly what a pop song should be, and it's just fun. And there's obviously you have sounds like the ticking clock in the song, and the song has a happy ending, which is kind of what you need in a pop song. Like if it was a metal song, everybody would have massacred at the end of it probably. But it's just good, harmless fun that people probably got too worked up about in the 70s. But I will never not listen to that song if it comes on the radio.
Great song.
But good stuff. The one-hit wonder stuff is fun. Like I said, we'll check out Ace coming up in 2 weeks. But we're back to Journey next week with a very unique album from Journey that I am very excited to get to listen to because it's going to be unlike, I think, any of the stuff that I've been listening to lately from them. So we'll find out how that goes. That is going to wrap up this edition of the Hard Rock Empire. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back again next Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. The music of May the 22nd coming up next week, so we hope you'll join us for that. A big thanks, as always, to Mike for his hard work on the podcast. Big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of the podcast, and a big thanks to you for listening whenever and wherever. And a big thanks to the people who comment on our videos, to the people who share our posts, who comment on our Facebook. All that stuff helps us tremendously. We thank you. It allows us to continue to do what we do, which we really appreciate it. That's all for now. We'll talk to you again next week for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. Until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Hard Rock Empire.